Welcome to the Idea Talks, where we discuss big ideas. The Idea Talks is a weekly podcast with Josh Tice and other leaders on big ideas for life, leadership, and ministry. And I'm your co-host, Drew Polvencia. For more information on this podcast, visit ideanetwork.church.
Hey, Drew, it's time to advertise.
This is my favorite part of each podcast.
Yeah, but we're not going to advertise the book any longer. Nobody cares.
I mean, I think you've sold a few copies at this point.
It's done. It's done. Put a fork in it, because right now we've got a new thing to push on you, the great listener.
Please tell us.
No, I can't, because some of these people are fast forwarding right now.
That's true.
No, stop
Skip
fast
ahead.
forwarding.
Stop the scroll.
Okay, now you're ready. Here's what we're going to advertise to you. That is the official membership of the Idea Network.
So originally it was called the Charter Membership.
Charter membership was
limited to like 100 people, right?
Yeah, and everybody, and only those who joined up in 2021. You say, man, I want to be a charter member. Well, too bad.
You can no longer be a charter member. However, you can be a part of the membership program.
That's right, an official member of the Idea Network. You say, but I listen to the podcast. You're not a member. Yeah, but I'm in that Facebook group. Not a member. Yeah, but I come to Idea Day. Not a member.
I bought swag off the store.
Not a member.
Yeah.
But that swag, by the way, is awesome stuff.
Pretty great.
Yeah. Official members are those who are joining the 2021 charter members in our membership program. What does that look like? Well, it looks like a monthly fee that goes toward the functioning of the Idea Network and allows the Idea Network to do the things that it does. With that membership, this is what you're purchasing. You're purchasing a weekly virtual roundtable with myself and other ministry leaders for the purpose of creating an environment to share collaborative ideas between Idea Nights, Idea Days, and Idea Summits. These virtual roundtables have been a refreshing time for so many of us. But not only that, you receive a swag box with all of the greatest merchandise Idea Network has to offer, and the ability to get involved in member-exclusive events. What are these member-exclusive events? Well, like coming up here in January.
Yeah, so think of like if you go to like a big event and there's like this special meetup that nobody knows about, except for like this elite group of people.
These are the elites.
That's it.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
For example, this January, we're going to be going to San Antonio and doing a members-exclusive Idea Day. And it's a lot of fun. Where we're going to stay, very nice place right there on the river. What are we going to do and what are we going to eat? Really nice event. In fact, we're pretty excited, Jeremy, Kylie, and I, because it's one of the nicest events we've ever put on. But this is only for our members. Look, we want you to be supportive of the network, and you want to be supportive of the network, but there's a lot that comes along with it. And we want you to be involved with the official membership of the Idea Network. All you have to do is go right to the website and look up membership and join us soon.
Ideanetwork.church. Sign up there. Welcome to this edition of the Idea Talks. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for just stopping by and spending some time with us.
The friend that's on today, his name is Chuck McQueen, an incredible pastor, a good friend of mine. We got to know each other at a recent Idea Mastermind, which we'll bring up in just a moment. But Pastor Chuck, hey pal, how you doing?
Doing well, Josh. How are you?
Good. You pastor Southside Baptist Church in Denison, Texas. So all our Texas boys out there are excited that you're on today.
Absolutely. Representing Texas, representing the great state of Texas.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself to our audience and let us know a little bit about your ministry, your church, and your passion for Jesus Christ.
Well, I have been pastoring Southside Baptist Church for a little over a year. I actually took over 3 months before COVID started. So welcome to the pastorate, right? Welcome to the ministry like that. So man, just loving it. Love Denison. Denison's a town of 25,000. My wife and I and our two kids, we love being back here in Denison. And we served on staff here at this church at Southside for almost 10 years as youth pastor, and God saw fit to bring us back to Denison. We love it. Love the community, love the area. And we've got a great church, a church with some great history. 72 years old, and I'm excited about what God's doing. Yeah, I'm excited about what God's doing in and through our church now, matched up with the history that we've got. It's a really unique situation, and I'm excited to get to talk a little bit about it tonight.
So what's unique about this situation? First of all, what's it like to pastor in Texas for the rest of us who pastor in the other 49? Is it a unique thing? I mean, everything's bigger in Texas, they say.
Everything is bigger in Texas. And so obviously we've got the greatest state. We've got the greatest churches with the greatest pastors. I mean, that is not just an unbiased opinion. I mean, a biased opinion. That's just the way it is. I mean, I read that somewhere. So anyways,
it's clearly that was stated by a Texan. I mean, there's no doubt that every Texan listening is, hipping and hollering in their yippee-ki-yo truck right now. I'm telling you, I'm really pegging everybody in this episode, but everybody else is like, you got to be kidding me, Texas. But the reality is I think we're all have a little Texas envy. I really do. During COVID, I think we've all looked over there and said, are they still a free state? And kind of you were, right?
We are. And that's one of the deals, talking about COVID, when that hit, I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, what do we do? What's going to happen? And then we look around and start seeing this state doing all these mandates, restrictions and stuff. And here we are in Texas. And, thankfully I've said, if I'm going to be a new pastor going through COVID, at least I'm doing it in the great state of Texas. So
now there's like 12 guys out there listening from South Dakota, and they're like, don't forget us. We are way more free than Texas, and we got to give you your props.
South Dakota and Florida, definitely. Yeah.
South Dakota's out there doing whatever they want to do. And the reason is because there's only 12 of you who live in the state. So look, I'm just offending.
And they commute. So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. They commute all down south, whatever's below South Dakota. Hey, now that I've offended everybody in the audience, look, you told me a little bit about your journey to the pastorate. You became the pastor after 10 years of serving under the former pastor. Tell us a little bit about what that's like.
Yeah, so I came on staff right out of college as the youth pastor here at Southside, and worked with our former pastor, Keith Taylor, and of course, kind of cut my teeth and learned the ins and outs of ministry under him as a youth pastor. And so for almost 10 years, served and learned a little bit about ministry, some things that I really liked, other things that I'm like, okay, that's one way to do it. And so 10 years, almost 10 years serving with him before God saw fit to bring us back and call us as pastor at that same church. So, this idea of a lot of church members saw me as the youth pastor, the goofy guy, the young, immature, that's Chuck. That's the way Chuck does it. That's the way it is. And now, come back and it's like, oh, it's Pastor Chuck now.
Yeah, I remember changing your diapers as you went on your youth activity. This kind of, well, maybe not so much. I'm not sure that. Okay.
Chubby bunny, at least something. Yeah.
Chubby bunny. Yeah.
And now he's preaching the gospel. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
And we're not going to edit that out because we just don't edit anything, even when I say weird stuff.
Might as well.
Okay. So really 10 years, I mean, as the youth pastor and then taking over the pastorate there, what is the current position of the role of your former pastor?
So when I became pastor, and I actually was voted in on our church's 72nd church anniversary, which was in September of 2019. And so we co-pastored together. We went into it with our leadership, understanding that, hey, there was a lot I still needed to learn, a lot that I didn't know, and just to try to gain some insight, not only on the pastorate, but the pastorate of this particular church. And so my desire, knowing that I had worked with the man, I felt like I had known his heart for ministry, his heart for these people, the heart for this area. I said, what can we do? And what is it that our church can do together collectively to still recognize and honor this man who served faithfully, by the way, for 34 years as pastor. He actually was 11 and a half years as youth pastor and assistant before he became the pastor. So just an incredible situation with that. And so got with the leadership, got with our deacons and thought what we can do. And of course, the what you would consider this maybe typical, he became our pastor emeritus. We gave him that title. And we wanted to allow him the opportunity to still be involved as much as he wants to, as much as his health allowed him to, and still have a position and a role in our church, because he's pastored a lot of these people for, like I said, 30 plus years. And as much of a transition as it was going to take for our church to have to see a new pastor, it was going to be a greater transition for him because he's no longer the pastor, and that's all he's done for the last 34 years. So
yeah, man. That's incredible. You know, there's probably some guys listening to this right now, and they're pastoring. They're maybe a youth pastor, children's pastor, associate pastor of some kind, and they see the writing on the wall. They feel the tugging of the Holy Spirit. They're going to become a pastor, maybe a pastor at that location, maybe a pastor elsewhere. And maybe they're in their 5th year, 7th year, 8th year, and they're thinking, I don't know if it's ever going to happen, and what do I do? Now, Chuck, you were in that position not so long ago. I never have been because of the path that God's put me on. Can you speak to the heart of that person, minister to them for a moment? You know what they're thinking. You know what they're going through. What would you say to them about their consistency in ministry and patience or whatever? Well, I don't know. What message would you give them?
Well, I got to be honest, Josh, if you would have asked me 3 years ago, 4 years ago, as a youth pastor, at the time, I had never had a desire really I really had said, man, I'm going to be the 50-year-old youth pastor. That's what I want to do. That's what I feel
awesome.
like God. Yeah, I was like, man, that's just, if that's where God has me. Some people say that it was the thought of my son getting ready to be in the youth ministry that drove me out of that. I don't know that for sure, but nonetheless, God began to do a work. And I just remember, I'll tell you this, to see the faithfulness of our former pastor, who's our pastor emeritus, to see him, but also to know that he had the heart to say, okay, there's going to come a time where he wants to retire, not from ministry, but from pastorate, to just sit there and say, okay, God, if this is what you've got for me, then I'm just going to be faithful and try to support him in any way that I can and try to be an encouragement to him, because he had the ability to be an encouragement to me for almost 10 years while I was on staff. And so even when I had really no desire or no thought that I ever was going to pastor, when God began to work on my heart that that's what he had, the simple fact of that he was going to allow me to pastor the church where I was the youth pastor at, definitely was a very humbling and sobering thought. But yet at the same time, I couldn't imagine being back here where we're at without having our former pastor. And so knowing God was setting all that up, I just felt like, I'm going to try to be as much of an encouragement and a blessing to him as he was to me.
I think it's awesome, Chuck, that, you still have the mentorship of the former pastor that's there as you're kind of learning, growing, handling the rope, so to speak, for yourself. Right. But I'm sure there's some tension maybe that happened between, trying to be respectful, of the former pastor, but try to also move forward and bring change. So how is the relationship with you two, and how did you maintain that relationship while still, bringing about change?
One of the things that Brother Taylor told me when I became pastor is he said, I've seen it too often and too many times where a guy says, hey, I'm going to turn the reins over, going to turn it over, and going to sit back and just allow the guy to pastor. And he said, I've seen that not happen. I've seen it where it's been the opposite. So he told me point blank, he said, any advice, any counsel, anything that you might receive is only going to be given when sought after. When I came to him with that, and the amazing thing is he stayed true to that. It goes back to the fact that he's got a heart for this particular ministry and these people, and he's even said it because of his age and because of how long he pastored. He said he knew that there was an opportunity, that there was change that needed. There was opportunity for things to be maybe done differently because of some youth and because of some energy that would be brought into it. And so because of that, he's just told me, he said, hey, you know what? You believe this is what God's got for you. And if you believe this is what God has for our church, he said, I'm going to be right there behind you, supporting you every step of the way. And the amazing thing is, I think, Josh, we talked about this while we were driving, is the fact that anything that I bring to the table, when I talk with our staff, when I talk with our leadership, I've included him in that just to say, hey, Brother Taylor, here's what we're talking about. Here's what we're looking at. Of course, this last year with COVID has been a little bit different with some of that strategy and some of that process. But ultimately, everything we've done, everything we've talked about, everything we have brought before the church that has been different from the way he did it, he sat there and he says, hey, I'm all in favor. I'm on board. And the most amazing thing is that when the church sees that, they follow right in line. I mean, they just come right behind and they're like, okay, hey, if that's what he feels is best, then let's go with it.
Wow, I love that. It seems like you're saying there's so much onus and responsibility on the position. I love how you're giving so much honor to the person to your former pastor, the pastor emeritus, And what that tells me is there's so much responsibility and onus on that position that they have to be willing and able to let go of the reins. If I'm not officially and legitimately the pastor of this church any longer, I need to allow this other pastor to genuinely pastor. So, I mean, kudos to him. It's like I can hear hundreds of voices over the internet right now as they listen to this. Praise God for a man that has the humility and the wherewithal to make that a priority in his shift and transition to allowing you to pastor that church. That must not be easy for him. What has that been like for you to have a mentor, a ministry leader, a pastor willing to take such positions?
Well, it's been huge. I mean, because again, I think if we talk about the negative side too, the fact that there have been too many instances where a guy does not want to let go, a guy realizes it's time, but he doesn't want to turn the reins over, and you can see the hindrance, you can see the negative tension that's there. But I got to tell you this, that when it comes to, and I'm not questioning, or I'm not desensitizing anybody's thought process or heart for a particular ministry. But when it comes to our pastor emeritus, our former pastor's heart, because he has invested so many years into so many people, he realized that obviously the ministry was bigger than him, that he said, okay, I've got to get out of the way and I've got to turn it over, because he sees that God's been good to us for these past 72 years, but the greatest times are still ahead for the next 70 plus years. And so because he has a heart for the people, he's willing to just take a step back and do that. And it's been absolutely huge for us, my family and I. The fact that we were here for 10 years already, we kind of had a head start in the race because we had relationships built not only in the church, but in the community. But because you have a guy that you're following that was here for 34 years, he's got relationships in the community that I just come alongside and I'm like, yeah, I took over for this guy. Oh, you're filling his shoes? No, I'm not filling his shoes. I'm just following in his footsteps that he's been willing to step out of the way.
The symbiotic relationship that you have with him, that he has with you, really ought to be a great example to so many. And there are two types of people right now that are listening to this. Maybe they're in the position where they are you, and there's the position of, man, I've got this person that I want to honor, this person that I want to respect. I want to honor the past while moving forward. I want to honor the past while pursuing God's plans for us. And they have to die to themselves a little bit. They have to say, okay, I need to show deference in this moment. I need to show respect. I need to show honor to whom honor is due. Then there's the other person in the scenario, and they are the pastor or the one who's about to retire, the same place that I'm going to be in 20 years, the same place you're going to be in 20, 25 years. And hopefully to God, we will have the same spirit that your pastor had, and a willingness to say, man, why would I ruin all the work that I've done for so many years by not using the symbiotic relationship we could have and really having a synergistic event where we're both ministering going forward in such a way as that as they show honor, I'm able to honor the new pastor. It kind of seems a both and, not an either or. It's not you better honor him. It's not he better respect you. It really seems to be going a both and situation. What would you say to that?
Well, I'm going to tell you that seeing his heart as he has kind of turned it over and just become a church member and following along, it's been an encouragement and a challenge to me that if he was willing and had enough heart for the ministry to say, okay, I'm turning it over, then it's an encouragement to me to say, okay, he's willing to do that. Let's be willing to go over and above to honor him for his service, because it could have been completely opposite where he wasn't. And so if he's going to be willing to do that on his end, I would be foolish not to on my end. And so that's what kind of keeps it into perspective for me.
Okay, I'm gonna just go out on a limb here and just state it. It seems from the conversation we're having, we're just talking like a couple guys around a Denny's table. It seems to me like if the former pastor, if the pastor that's about to retire, if the pastor that God is moving on into fourth generation or fourth quarter ministry is willing to show deference, respect, love, and honor, and bring in this new individual and show honor to this new pastor, if he does that, then it's much easier for the new pastor to show honor and respect past. It's almost as if, to me, I do a lot of marital counseling, it's almost like if a man chooses to lead and love his wife and love her like Christ loved the church, it's so much easier for the wife to respond in respect, submission, love, and honor back to her husband. maybe it's the case. I don't know. We're just talking about this, a couple of guys. It kind of seems like that leadership should come from the elder, and then it is responded by the younger. What would you say, Drew?
Yeah, I think there's, like you said, there's two different kinds of groups that are listening. And I think I've seen both spectrums, right? I've seen many pastors that are in their 70s, that are late 70s. They have health issues. They're starting to become frail, but yet they're holding on so tight to their ministry and not focusing on what Chuck has said, like they're not viewing themselves as a steward of God's ministry. It's their ministry. So I think about it's their job to potentially look at, say, hey, like it's not going to look exactly like me. It's not going to sound like exactly like me, but that's okay. God still has somebody for the next generation to rise up to lead his people. Same time, those are who are younger and ambitious, right? Looking upwards and saying like, I can't wait to have my shot at the riding the reins, right? And driving it myself. Careful what you wish for, I think we're already, it's very easy to criticize upwards without, heavy lies the head of the crown, right? And I think it's very easy to criticize upwards when you don't have that authority and you don't have the weight of the position. So that's what I think I would say.
Again, that the calling and the position of a pastor, too often we've seen it. And no matter what circle someone's from, no matter where they're coming from, what their ministry type is like, you've seen it both sides, where it's like, okay, this is a me first ministry. It's all about me. And that's the deal. When you get in that situation and you find either or, the retiring pastor who says it's all about me and this is my ministry that I've got to figure out how to let go. If that's the mindset, it's going to be hard to let it go because that's where your identity is. That's what you're placing as well. This is who I am. This is my deal. And the same for the incoming pastor. If that's, well, this is my ministry. And like you said, I'm ready to take over because, well, be careful what you wish for, because if you have that mindset and you have that attitude, no telling what's going to happen next, and no telling what's going to come your way, and it's not about you. And so it's got to be on both ends, an understanding it is God's ministry. And whoever is the pastor at the time, that's God's man for the job at that particular time. And when the pastor says, okay, it's time that God's moving me, I really don't think there's a guy out there when they retire that desires to want to go anywhere else, unless they're going, into like full-time evangelism or something like that. I mean, if they've poured their heart and soul into a particular ministry, what guy wouldn't want to stay there with those people and be able to serve and minister and see the benefits moving forward? So, I mean, that puts things into perspective for the new guy coming in to say, okay, I want to honor that because he has given so much to this ministry. But on my end, as the new pastor, it sure makes it a whole lot easier when I see that happening on the other end. That cycle, like you said, Josh, of, okay, well, if the spouse, husband, wife, the husband loves the wife and cares for and leads, she has, no other choice. It's easy to respect and to follow. And if you see, like in our situation where the pastor emeritus, the former pastor, is just being willing to turn it over and be my biggest cheerleader, I have no other choice but to say, you know what, I'm going to honor him for what he's done and what he's continuing to do.
Well, I got to just say it. We as a community just honor and respect your pastor and his willingness to follow the Lord's leading throughout his entire life, the decades of ministry that he had right there at your local congregation, right there in Denison. But then to follow the Lord into quasi-retirement as he continues to minister in many ways to his own congregation and to others. And then he ministers to you and his congregation by supporting your leadership the same way you supported his for so many years. What a beautiful example. And I'm hoping that this example would not just be an example to those listening now. I'm hoping that it would register deep and within my own psyche, because there is coming a day where Drew will have to sit me down and say, okay, Pastor, you're done, pal. Time to move into your fourth quarter. Time to move into your new ministry opportunity. Let's go visit Italy like we've always talked about with our wives, and let's go travel the world because there's somebody new that God is calling here. And would to God, Chuck, that you and I and all of the young men in their 30s and 40s right now would have the grace and fortitude to have the same spirit that your pastor has had toward you, so that the work of God continues, and it is the work of God and not our own. I'll give you the last word, Chuck. What are your thoughts? Moving forward while honoring the past.
I can tell you that we're not the only church and the only ministry where this has happened and been successful. There have been countless other stories. And like you said, to each one of those stories, to every pastor, former pastor, retired pastor that has turned it over. I mean, that's, thank God for that. But again, I'm going to be a little prideful right now, and I'm going to be just a little bit, I'm grateful that God has allowed me in my first pastorate to be in the situation that we're in. God knew exactly where I needed to be, where my family needed to be, as we moved into this particular season of ministry. And he knew that where I was at and where we were getting to, I couldn't have done it if I didn't have the guy that I was following. And to go through what we've gone through with COVID, to go through what we've gone through this transition, if I don't have that sort of encouragement from my former boss, that is now our former pastor, I don't know if I would, obviously, I don't know if I could still be going forward like that. So that has been a world of difference and has been a tremendous encouragement.
I absolutely love your heart of grace toward those who may have not been in the exact same situation as you, because easily this podcast could be an episode where we're saying, man, if you're as a younger man, just honor the previous generation, then everything will be okay. But we know very well, we have dear friends listening to this podcast. They have not been given the opportunity that your pastor gave you. In fact, there are those who fight after the pulpit, who malign current pastors, who try to destroy even the work that God had created in them and through their ministry. And I know my heart is going out to those pastors even now that are listening to this. And we want to encourage you, don't give up in the fight. Thank God for the wonderful relationship that Chuck has had with his pastor, and that may have not been your experience. We want you to know that we stand with you, we stand behind you, and we pray for you in the midst of this battle. And we do hope that when it comes to the time that the Lord moves us on from our current role, we would love and encourage and aspire to help the next generation of pastors as they come in and through Christ's kingdom. Chuck, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. I've always loved your heart ever since I've had a chance to get to know you at that mastermind retreat. Can you tell our audience a little bit about the mastermind retreat? What is it, and what did you get from it?
It was just an opportunity where a bunch of guys went to the mountains and we hung out. No, I'm just kidding. No, it was a tremendous.
There was a lot of that. That's for sure. Yeah.
No, it was a tremendous encouragement. And of course, where we got to get away for a couple of days and sit around with some other guys, more than just this idea day or idea night, idea summit, where it's just some, guys getting close with each other, on more of a personal level, getting to know some of the struggles your ministry is facing, some of the things, and ultimately, getting together and trying to figure out what your ministry needs to do to go to the next level, what that one big idea is. And I can tell you, having some thoughts as far as going into it, like, oh, maybe this is what our church is going to do or needs to do. When we got to the retreat, God completely shattered all of my thoughts or expectations and said, no, this is what, and it was because of the guys that God surrounded me with, and because of the leadership of Josh Tice and Josh Ermler, and just what they brought to the table was something that definitely had you thinking out of the box. And so I'm already excited about next year's and looking forward to it, to see what God's got in store for us as we move forward. And it goes beyond just the 2 or 3 days we're in the mountains, because we're continuing to encourage and continuing to be challenged. And it's a really, really neat opportunity.
Now, if you're interested in being involved with the idea, what we call the One Big Idea Mastermind Retreat, all you need to do is contact Josh Ermler or myself, DM us at any time, say, hey, I want information on the Mastermind Retreat. It is a exclusive event, and it's something that we only attempt to bring 10, 11 guys total, including Josh and myself, so that we can keep the integrity of what the event actually is supposed to be, a coaching 3-day seminar. So if you're interested in that, DM us, and we will get you more information on that.
Chuck, if our audience wants to reach out to you and get to know a little bit more about you and your ministry, where can they find you?
Well, I mean, I'm our website, ssbctx.org, got our church's ministry and stuff about that. But, I'm on, I guess, most of the social media platforms. On Facebook, you'll have to find me as my distinguished name, Charles McQueen.
No lightning.
No, it's not under Lightning. You know,
Okay.
funny story. When my son was born, both of us have bright red hair, and the nurses tried to get me while my wife was, knocked out or whatever from the procedure. Tried to get me to put his middle name as Lightning McQueen, and I failed as a father with that because I didn't do it. But anyways,
But you succeeded as a husband.
I guess, yeah, something maybe. I mean, who knows? She might have wanted it as Lightning. But anyways, no, Facebook, obviously, social media, Charles McQueen. I'm on Twitter, Instagram. Is that what you're wanting? I don't know if that's what
That's
you're
it,
wanting.
yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah,
All right,
we want people to be able to reach out to you and snipe at you as best as possible, as well as reach out for advice and encouragement, because we know that you've been such an encouragement to us. Pastor Chuck McQueen, we're really glad to have you part of the network and really thankful to have you on this episode of the Idea Talks. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys and look forward to all the help that we're going to have down the road. Appreciate it very much, guys.
Thanks so much for listening to today's Idea Talks. If you would like to reach out to us, drop us an email at joshtice@ideanetwork.church. If you benefited from this podcast, we ask that you take a moment to show your support by subscribing, rating, and reviewing the podcast on iTunes. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you right here again at the Idea Talks podcast.